Most budgets fail, not because people are lazy or bad with money, but because most budgets are miserable. They ask you to track every coffee, categorize every receipt, and feel guilty about every purchase. Within a few weeks, almost everyone quits. So a simpler idea took over the internet. A budget with just 3 numbers: 50, 30, 20. It promises to organize your entire financial life without spreadsheets or guilt. It has been recommended to millions of people. But here is the real question, the one this video is actually about. Does it genuinely work? Because a rule being simple and popular does not automatically make it right for you. So let us break down exactly how it works, where it shines, and where it quietly falls apart. Let us start with the mechanics, because the appeal is its simplicity. The rule says to take your after-tax income, the money that actually lands in your bank account, and divide it into 3 buckets. 50% goes to needs, 30% goes to wants, and 20% goes to savings and debt repayment. That is the entire system. 3 categories, 3 percentages. There is no tracking of individual purchases, no 40-line spreadsheet, no color-coded categories for groceries versus household goods. You make sure your money roughly lands in those 3 proportions. Senator Elizabeth Warren and her daughter popularized the idea in a book about personal finance, and it spread because it does something most budgets never manage. It gives you structure without demanding perfection. Now, let us define each bucket carefully, because this is where most people go wrong. Needs are the expenses you genuinely cannot avoid, the things required to live and work. Your rent or mortgage, utilities, groceries, meaning actual food from a store, transportation to your job, insurance, minimum debt payments, basic healthcare. If you stopped paying it, something serious would break. Your housing, your health, your ability to earn. That is a need. Here is the trap. People constantly slide their wants into this bucket to justify them. A car is a need, a luxury car is not. Food is a need, restaurant delivery 4 nights a week is not. The internet may genuinely be a need for work. The premium streaming bundle is not. Be ruthlessly honest here. Because if your needs bucket is quietly inflated, the entire budget stops telling you the truth. The second bucket is 30% for wants, and this is the part that makes the rule so livable. Wants are everything that makes life enjoyable, but is not strictly necessary. Dining out, travel, hobbies, streaming services, concerts, the nicer apartment when a cheaper one would do. Notice the size of this bucket. 30% is generous, and that is deliberate. The rule's designers understood something crucial about human behavior. A budget that forbids all joy will be abandoned within a month. By openly giving you nearly a third of your income to spend on things you simply want, guilt-free, the system makes itself sustainable. You are not depriving yourself. You are spending on purpose, within a boundary you set in advance. That psychological insight is arguably the rule's greatest strength. The third bucket is 20% for savings and debt repayment, and this is the one that actually changes your life. This is where your emergency fund gets built, where your retirement contributions go, where your investments grow, and importantly, this is also where any extra debt payments live, meaning anything beyond the minimum payments you already counted as a need. Paying down high-interest debt belongs here because functionally, it is building your future net worth just like saving does. Think of this bucket as paying your future self first. Everything in the other 2 buckets funds the life you are living today. This one funds the life you will have tomorrow. And here is the hard truth. If this bucket is consistently empty, no amount of budgeting elsewhere is really working. So let us give it real credit, because there is a reason this rule spreads so widely. First, it is simple enough to actually remember and follow, and a budget you follow beats a perfect budget you abandon. Second, it prioritizes the right thing. It forces savings to be a planned category rather than whatever happens to be left over at the end of the month, which for most people is nothing. Third, it is flexible. Within your 30%, you can spend on whatever you like, so it never dictates your values or shames your choices. And fourth, it works as a diagnostic tool, even if you never adopt it. Just calculating your current percentages tells you instantly where your money is out of balance. For someone who has never budgeted at all, this rule is an outstanding starting point, and that is genuinely valuable. But now let us be honest, because the answer to the title question is not a simple yes. The rule has real weaknesses. The biggest one is housing costs. In expensive cities, rent alone can consume 40 or even 50% of someone's take-home pay. For that person, keeping all needs under 50% is mathematically impossible, and the rule can feel less like guidance and more like a judgment they have already failed. Second, the rule scales poorly at the extremes. For someone on a low income, 50% for needs may be far too little, since necessities take up a much larger share when you earn less. Meanwhile, For a high earner, spending 30% of a very large income on wants is wildly excessive, and saving only 20% leaves enormous potential on the table. Third, it says nothing about the order of operations. It does not tell you whether to build an emergency fund first, attack high interest debt, or invest. It just lumps them together in one bucket. And finally, the categories blur. Reasonable people will argue forever about whether a gym membership, a car upgrade, or a certain apartment counts as a need or a want. So here is the honest verdict. Yes, the 50-30-20 rule works, but it works as a framework, not as a law. Think of it as a compass, not a cage. Its true value is not in the exact numbers. It is in the underlying principles which are almost universally correct. Keep your essential costs contained, enjoy your money deliberately and without guilt, and pay your future self a meaningful, non-negotiable share before the money disappears. Those three ideas are sound for nearly everyone. The specific percentages are just a reasonable starting suggestion, and they should absolutely be adjusted to fit your reality. If someone tells you the rule failed them because their rent is too high, the rule did not fail. It simply revealed the real problem, which is that their housing cost is out of proportion to their income. That is useful information, not a verdict on their character. So let us make it practical. Start by calculating your actual percentages right now using your last month of spending. Take your after-tax income and figure out what share went to needs, wants, and savings. Do not judge it yet, just look, because most people have never once seen this number, and it is often eye-opening. Then adjust the targets to your situation. If you live somewhere expensive, perhaps 60% needs, 20% wants, and 20% savings is your realistic version, and that is fine as long as that final bucket survives. If you earn well, push hard the other way, maybe 50, 20, 30, or better. If you carry high interest debt, temporarily shrink your wants and pour it into that last bucket to escape faster. The one rule I would treat as close to sacred is this: protect the savings bucket. It is the only one that builds anything. Cut wants before you cut your future. And whatever your numbers are, automate that savings transfer the day you get paid so it happens before you have a chance to spend it. So let us bring it all together. The 50-30-20 rule splits your after-tax income into 50% needs, 30% wants, and 20% savings and debt repayment. Its genius is simplicity and sustainability. It gives structure without spreadsheets and joy without guilt, which is exactly why people stick with it. But it is not a universal law. It strains under high housing costs, it fits low and high earners poorly, and it stays silent on which financial goal to tackle first. So does it actually work? Yes, as a starting framework and a diagnostic tool, absolutely. Just do not treat those three numbers as sacred. Treat the principles as sacred, contain your needs, enjoy your wants on purpose, and always pay your future self. Adjust the percentages to your life, protect that last bucket, and the budget will work for you instead of the other way around. If this helped, subscribe because we are breaking down every money tool one video at a time. This video is for educational purposes only and is not financial advice. Always do your own research before making any financial decision.